Hello, and thank you for tuning in for another career journey with Coach Stella. I am your host, Coach Stella, and we are joined here with the lovely, multi-talented Miss Lula Hannes. Lula, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to give us your journey. You all are in for a treat. So, as you all know, Career Journeys is a platform for everyday folks to just give us some insights into how they landed in their respective roles, from childhood, the upbringings, through higher education, credentials, whatever tools they needed to acquire along the way. And so for this season, I am focusing, I have a special segment where I want to talk through wellness in the workplace. And so I have curated a guest list of folks who are coming in to talk through their wellness journey or healing while working journey that has helped them along the way and has really impacted their careers. And so I'm really excited for you all to dive in with me as we talk to Lula to understand more about her career journey and her wellness path. All right, Lula. So please introduce yourself to the people. Tell us about yourself, your background, and anything that you think will be helpful as we unpack your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Lula. I was born and raised in Chicago. I grew up in the Uptown community on the north side of Chicago. Definitely a CPS girl. Went to CPS all throughout my education journey here. I grew up in an Eritrean household as a first generation daughter. So, shout out to all my first generation daughters out there. Yeah, exactly. Overall, my childhood was pretty lovely. I went to a middle school where I did a lot of dance. I was part of the dance club, dance team. Um, However, as the firstborn daughter of immigrants, I ended up taking on a lot of responsibility at a really young age. I had the unique situation where my parents came as refugees in the early 80s and did not have the opportunity to have an education back in Eritrea, nor had the opportunity to have an education here in the States. So, because of that, my parents did not know how to read or write in English or in the native language, which kind of left a lot of responsibility on me as the oldest and the oldest daughter to figure things out pretty quickly. Um, there were times when I remember like asking my teacher, like, what's the difference between HMO and PPO, just to like kind of help obtain that knowledge and bring it back to my parents. So I did a lot of figuring out um, on my own. And most of my friends who lived in the building that I lived in were in very similar situations. We all kind of had to figure things out on our own. So kind of taking that spirit of figuring things out. I definitely took that with me. So, for an example of that, I went to Von Steuben, which is not a part of the neighborhood high school, kind of like the neighborhood feeder school with Sen High School. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. I just want to do something different. How do I not go to Sen or Sullivan High School? So I reached out to a teacher of mine. They mentioned like entering a lottery to be able to go to different schools outside of my district, and I won the lottery to attend Von Steuben. So that's how I was able to kind of utilize those skill sets, if you will, of like navigating what's around me to go to Von Steuben. Um, High school was great. I absolutely loved Von Steuben. Super diverse high school. It was a science center, so it was like heavily focused on the sciences. Although I didn't bring that dance element with me to high school, it definitely opened my eyes to all the various science programs. I would take classes like anatomy, physiology, psychology, kinesiology, all the ologies you can possibly think of. I was just kind of devouring all of it. I had a great network of friends as well, those from childhood and through high school, some of which I'm actually still friends to this very day, decades later. Um, so that was mostly my high school experience. When it came time, however, to graduate my senior year to go to college, I had no idea what college to go to. Again, we had like the feeder colleges and universities that people were going to, but I knew I wanted something different. So I remember asking my friends, like, where are you going? Where are you going? And whenever they gave me the name of the schools they were applying to, I just applied. So I didn't really have a strategy, nor did I really have anyone at home or in my community to really help me out with that. Because again, a lot of my friends were in the same situation, if you will. So I remember my senior year, I had a sociology professor. I remember asking him, like, what do you think I should do? Where should I go? And he was like, have you ever heard of Knox College? I have no idea what that is. And he explained he had a former high school student. He had a former student that was a professor there. So he's like, it's a great school. You should really consider it. You know, he gave me all the ins and outs of it. So I applied. So I remember applying to 7 different schools, and they were the ones that actually gave me the best scholarship. They gave me lots in grants and opportunities there. So that's actually how I ended up figuring out what I was going to do for for college. Another interesting thing that happened in high school senior year, as you know, you have to figure out the FAFSA. At that time, again, I had no idea what the FAFSA was. It's not like I could really go home and ask anyone there to help me with this. And taking kind of like that figuring out mentality, I said, I'm going to go to the Boys and Girls Club. Mind you, I've never went to the Boys and Girls Club. I only remember the Boys and Girls Club because they had, in my neighborhood, they had some like dance competitions back in middle school. So that's like how I kind of remembered the Boys and Girls Club. So I went to the Boys and Girls Club with my parents' like tax returns, and I went to like the little computer room and asked the person there, can you help me figure out how to do the FAFSA and apply for this? I have no idea what I'm doing. And the gentleman was so kind. He's like, absolutely, I got you. So he sat me down at the computer, and I learned what a 1040 was. I learned about what all these big, scary, complicated tax numbers are. But yeah, again, utilizing that figuring it out mentality, although it was challenging, obviously very challenging at the time. It's challenging for even us as adults to kind of navigate life, if you will. But I definitely took that I still take that mentality to this day. And it definitely helped me build confidence. I can figure things out and navigate that. So that's how I was able to figure out the FAFSA and decide on the college that I went to.
It sounds to me, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your origin story, your beginnings. And I'm sitting here nodding my head because I can relate so much as also a first gen born in the US. And it sounds to me that education was valued in your household where you knew, it's not, it wasn't necessarily if you're going to school, but where are you going to school?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It wasn't even an option. I was going to go. Didn't necessarily matter of when and like where, but education was always number one.
Right.
Especially given where they came from, they knew education was your ticket, if you will, ticket to freedom, so they definitely wanted a better path for my brother and I.
Yeah, very quintessential immigrant story, especially Black immigrant, African immigrant families, and the priority of education and familial responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. All in one, all packaged in one.
And that could be a journey segment in and of itself.
Yes. It's its own separate book.
But it sounds like the life skills you developed from those familial responsibilities paid off for you, where you were then able to say, I'm going to use those same skills to advocate for my own experiences. And it started in, not making the decision to go outside your neighborhood, to high school, and then making the most out of that experience. And then from there, using that to then navigate financing your college education, by walking into, this community center, Boys and Girls Club, and asking. I can relate to that senior year. I was senior year of college. I was running low on funds. I had some balance, and senior year, like what? And I remember walking in. Oh no, that was the second time I did that. The very first time I didn't fill out the FAFSA. I didn't know what the FAFSA
Right.
was.
Yeah.
I had this huge balance fall semester. I had a whole amount account. How I even got through that far, how I made it that far, and no one flagged me down or anything is another story. But I remember being so overwhelmed looking at that price tag and the financial hold on my account that I went straight to the bursar's office, straight to the financial aid office, and was like, I need to speak to the director. Oh, can I help you? No, you cannot. You can help me by directing me to the director.
I've had a couple of those in college too, where I mean, those numbers are scary even in today, right? Let alone our 18, 22-year-old self. I
Yeah.
did the same thing. I walked in, if the number looked off by $1, I'm like, I need you to figure this out.
Yes.
We ain't got it. Pull it from somewhere and make it happen.
Right. I was that person, like, let me speak to the manager, or, I didn't say it. I was super respectful, again,
Of
18,
course. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
but also like, this is above your pay grade. I need the director.
I can't figure, there's not enough student work to cover this bill. There's not enough of that.
It's not enough. It's not
Worked
enough.
for 10 years trying to pay off that bill at whatever that pay rate was at the time. So
Yeah, so I can relate that, for you at 16, 17, you walking into that Boys and Girls Club with your parents' tax forms, and I'm pretty sure you had a hand in preparing to begin with.
oh yeah.
And taking it over there, and getting the help. Okay, so let's fast forward through college. You decided to go to Knox College, a small liberal arts school. And while it's still in state, you left home.
Yeah.
And so talk to me about what that transition was like. What did familial responsibilities look like? Did that follow you to college? And also just give me some highlights on what your college experience was like.
Yeah. So my first year was a tough year. So I made the mistake of not visiting school. So a lot of my friends went to orientation to check it out and then sign on the dotted line. I immediately said, they're giving me the most in grants. I'm signing off. What's the worst that can happen? And then I remember it was time to drive to Knox, and it's 3 hours from Chicago. And mind you, I have never been out of the city unless it was to, Eritrea, back to Africa. But I didn't know rural areas existed. That's how small my world was. I knew there were suburbs and I knew there was a city, but I didn't know people lived in rural areas. That's how small my world was, just to give you a perspective. So even just driving there, I remember seeing like corn and farms and cows. I remember my parents being like, where are you going? I'm like, I have no idea what this place is. Like, this exists in America? Like, not everyone lives in a city. Like this, again, 18-year-old Lula. So no judgment for 18-year-old Lula. But I remember being there, and then they dropped me off. They dropped me off in my room, and I thought, what did I get myself into? No one looked like me. I didn't see a lot of buildings. It was just such a foreign space and area. I just remember being so uncomfortable. I I remember the first couple of weeks, like I barely spoke to people. I just felt so out of my element. I was a part of a program, I think it's called like Student Support Services or something along those lines. And anyone who was a Pell Grant recipient could have access to those services. So I remember they pinged me, let me know that they were available, and I pretty much never left that office. I ended up getting a work study there for all 4 years. But that first year was tough. And I had a wonderful counselor, Sandra. I had a wonderful counselor. She helped me navigate, what classes to take. She was a part of the student support services. So she kind of helped me navigate what to take. What are the options? There were some majors I've never even heard of before. Like I never heard of economics until I was in college, and I ended up majoring in it. But again, my world was so small. And I remember I used to be in her office freshman year, sitting there looking at her like, I don't like this. I can't do this. I don't want to be here. And she'll say like, Lula, I think you're culture shocked. And I thought to myself, again, 18-year-old Lula, I'm Black. I can't be culture shocked. And she kind of stared at me like, you poor thing. I remember that conversation like it was yesterday. But she was right. Hindsight's 2020. I was culture shocked. It was a completely different environment for me. But I remember that first semester calling my parents saying like, I want to go back to Chicago. And they were like, absolutely not. You're staying there. You're going to school. So I'm like, all right, I'm here. Might as well make the best of it. And my room, the person who was next door to me, she was from Chicago, from the west side of Chicago. So I'm like, okay, another Chicagoan. So she and I connected, and she introduced me to more friends, and I started opening up. And before you knew it, I loved the rest of the 3.5 years there. It was just my first semester that I really struggled, just kind of getting used to the new environment and feeling like the other. There was definitely a part of me at that time that kind of felt like I didn't belong or wasn't smart enough. I would be in classes where people's parents were doctors and CEOs and, taking over the world of companies that we know and love to this day. And here I am, little girl from uptown. So I remember the first year kind of feeling a bit insecure about that, about whether or not I belonged. Shortly after I made more friends, I was getting better grades, which made me feel proud. I was like, oh, I'm actually smart. I'm actually smarter than a lot of these people here. So, it kind of boosted up my confidence a little bit. One of the reasons why I actually ended up choosing an economics degree, which for a while I was playing, my freshman year, kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. When I was introduced to economics, they mentioned that economics is the allocation of scarce resources. Like that's what you would study. And it absolutely fascinated me because I remember thinking, well, I grew up with scarce resources. I know many people who grew up with scarce resources, and like, what's the psychology behind how you allocate this, right? So it was very interesting to me regarding like the psychology along with like the data behind that psychology. I ended up loving it. And yeah, that's what I ended up majoring in. But college ended up being great. I still have like very close friends from there to this day.
That's awesome. It sounds like once you secured your sense of belonging, once you found your community, your sense of belonging increased, then opened up the floodgates of who the multi-talented Lula was.
Yes.
And these folks that come from more, have more opportunity.
Come from more opportunity.
Come from more, just as, if not more intellectual than them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was, I was on par. I took advantage of all the resources that student support services had. So there, college is a lot of paper writing, which wasn't a skill set I had developed too much in high school. So like they helped me out with that, helped me understand how to write a proper paper. And it's kind of how I started learning more about my writing style and just more about myself. College was really a playground to learn more about yourself. And it's a safe space to do so because you're in this little bubble where everything is handed to you. You don't have to go out and seek it. You're nodding because you know what I mean. As adults, we have to make efforts to do these things, but in college, it's there, it's given to you. Everything is kind of like mapped out for you in this bubble.
Absolutely. You preach it to the choir here. I appreciate you saying that because that is everything I preach. And like, I know college is not for everyone. Higher education is very broad. You can, whether it's vocational or college or 4-year or 2-year public, private, something beyond the high school diploma is a game changer and a sure way. But the 2-year, 4-year setting is a playground to figure out who you are.
Figure it out. And there are people there ready to help.
Yes.
Like genuinely, they are there to help you, whether you ask or not, especially if you ask. The resources are available. I mean, I was a part of the McNair program. They reached out to me and I qualified for that. And I was part of that program where I had a chance to do my own research that was personal to me, and had a chance to travel throughout the US because of that. There's so many opportunities that are available in college. And I completely agree with you. It's not for everyone. I think it's especially reigning true nowadays. I do wish there was more opportunity at that time, to have the option to explore vocation, explore other programs. But you're completely right. I do think something out of high school is a game changer.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't come from a background of access to people or resources. You become your own access. You become your own resource.
Yeah. 100% agree. 100% agree. All right. So let's fast forward your higher education experience. Talk to me about landing your first role in the profession. What are some tactics or strategies you use to landing your first role? And talk to me about the highlights of that.
Yeah. So, I graduated a year before the crash. So there was no strategy. It was literally the opposite of what we see nowadays. I don't think it's ever gone back to 2027, to 2007. I remember being like monster.com was a thing. You put your resume up. I went to the career office, get my career, my resume intact. I remember doing that and using that as a resource and just posting my resume and having all the employers come. So it wasn't a fair advantage at that time. So I did land my first gig as a benefits analyst. I think it's currently called Aon. So I did that for about a year and a half, and it wasn't for me. And I left the role. Shortly after, I had a couple jobs here and there. I did end up going to grad school as well, thinking like this master's will be, the thing that kind of helps move me forward. However, it was 2012. We were like 4 years into this recession that doesn't seem to be ending. And I remember when I was getting my master's, people were getting their second master's. Like that's how competitive it was. So just like 5 years later, it was just completely different market. People were getting their second master's. The only thing I could find were volunteer positions within my field. So I had the experience, but I wasn't getting paid. The positions I was able to find are those where I was undervalued or underemployed. So you would get a job, but it barely paid anything, So it was a really tough time, even with the masters. I was competing with people with double masters, competing with people who had second, third, fourth languages on their resume, all these technical skills on their resume. It was just a really tough market. So I do remember around that time, a friend of mine was like, hey, I work for this catering company as a server. This is how much they pay. You can at least do this while you're in grad school instead of working as like a volunteer somewhere. So I thought, and the pay was actually pretty decent. It was paying actually more than what some of these corporations were paying for full-time jobs. So I thought, yeah, absolutely. So I was in grad school and doing that at the same time. Before I knew it, I was in what would be a 10-year special events career where I worked as a catering supervisor and eventually working as an associate director of special events for a university on the north side of Chicago. So for those 10 years being in special events, mind you, I'm not using my major. I'm not using my economics degree. I'm not using my master's degree at this point, which I definitely felt some type of way for a while for not utilizing that, because I really did try to make attempts and network, and nothing just came to fruition. So Lula having to figure it out. All right, there's employment here. I'm going to do this, and it's paying more than what market's paying for other roles. So for 10 years, I was in special events. I want to say towards the end of that, I did get that position at the university working as associate director of special events, where every day I worked tirelessly planning elaborate events for the wealthy. When I say every day, my every day essentially consisted of I live on the south side of the Kenwood neighborhood. I had like a beautiful condo at that time. And I would wake up early in the morning. I would have a 45-minute drive north. I get to work at 8:30. From 8:30 to 5, I would work my 9 to 5. And then after 5, from 5 to 10, about 2 or 3 times a week, I would host house dinners for the president of the university. So those 5 to 10, I would work that event, and then I would drive back home, get home at like 10:45 or 11 o'clock at night, sometimes just to do it all over again the next day. I also planned his international events as well. So whenever I had an event in Asia, sometimes after an event, I would get home at 11 and I would make my phone calls to China so that I can move events forward, because it was morning time there. Otherwise, there's like a delay, like a 24-hour delay from my emails. So I was busy. I was moving. I still moonlighted as a catering supervisor on the weekends as well. So that kind of immigrant hustle mentality of like collecting all your coins was very much ingrained in me.
As you named it, the immigrant hustle story. Yes.
It was in me, but let me tell you, I'm a divine feminine at heart. But at that time, I did not know. I didn't know any better. It's what I knew. It's what I knew. There was even like a little 3-month stint where after an event at 1 p.m. or 1 a.m., like a wedding that would end at 1 a.m., I would Uber for a little bit on the way home just to collect some extra cash. Like, that's how insane I was at that time. Oh yeah. There was a very short 3-month period I was doing that, but I was doing all the things just to make ends meet. I mean, I was very grateful for the position. It's like, it was secure, but it was aging me. It was aging me, and it was stressing me out.
And this is why I wanted to. This is why I extended the invitation for you to come here. Because people need to hear this, because again, so many people can relate to this hustle flow mindset that we have been in for decades. This isn't anything new. And burnout. So, Lula, my next question to you, can you share a time when you were grieving, healing, or simply just running on empty and yet still had to show up for work? What was that journey like, and what did you ultimately have to do, or what decisions did you ultimately have to make for yourself?
Yeah. So, that every day working tirelessly, it was getting old pretty quickly. at that time, hindsight's 2020. At that time, my value was very much based on external factors, right? What's my income, my title, how busy my schedule is, how I'm living, where I'm living, kind of things that we were taught that made us of value and that we should prioritize in our life. But I noticed that it came at my physical expense. So just to share, so I worked at associate director position for 3 years. And it wasn't until like the second year where I had the opportunity to go on an international trip to China. It was a three city tour. It was a really big deal for the university, and I was the one planning that event. So one day I asked a good friend of mine to take a passport photo of me. So she's like, sure. So we decide the utility closet on the first floor would be great, just like a white wall with the fluorescent lights or whatever. So she takes a couple pictures of me, and I look at the photo, and then I look back at her, and I'm like, do I look like this? Do I really walk around looking like this? She's like, what do you mean? She's like, you look fine. Stella, my eyes were like baggy and dark. My skin looked dull. There was like a little tiredness around my eyes. My hair was shorter and breaking and shedding. It wasn't as voluminous as it used to be. I did not recognize my reflection in that photo. And mind you, obviously I have mirrors at home, but it was something at that moment where I was like, oh, this job is aging me. This job is stressing me out and aging me. And I can like physically see it. It wasn't really until a year later of like, once that kind of seed was planted, I started becoming a little more resentful of like having to go to work, started caring a little bit less about the energy I was putting into my performance. And then finally, my body just like felt so tight and so like, just so much pressure. I felt like an internal pressure cooker, like something has to change. I can't do this anymore. And then finally, I just gave in and said, you know what? I'm going to quit my secure job with nothing lined up, and I don't care. That's how bad it was. So going from like 2-3 jobs to making ends meet, Mrs. Survival mode to, I don't care. I have a history of figuring it out, and I'm going to figure this out. Don't know how, but I know this isn't working. So that's what I did. October of 2019, I quit and I didn't care. Mind you, the ominous October 2019, not knowing COVID was 5 months ahead of me. But I didn't care. I slept in. I got myself a dog. I've always wanted a dog, but I didn't have the time. I finally got a dog who actually was born on the same day I quit the job. So I was like, this is meant to be. I was a dog mom. And I noticed within 30 days, like I started coming back to life. Like I felt like I just exhaled, and I absolutely loved just being able to not have that pressure on my back. It showed in how I carried myself and in my presence. And then
now, Lula, I'm gonna let's thank you for sharing that. I want to unpack that a little bit, and also just not knowing COVID was on the horizon. That was still a huge decision that you made for yourself, and one that we can't really skip, or lightly brush up on. It sounds to me that you felt yourself disappearing physically,
absolutely.
And knowing that, some people are like, as a single female, independent, you got a condo, so there's a mortgage attached to that, and yet making a decision that I have to leave this primary source well-paying role with nothing lined up.
Nothing lined up. No game plan, no nothing. I just knew that I had to choose myself. I had to care about how I feel. Like I wasn't choosing myself. My career decisions up until that point were survival mode positions. I did it because they were handed to me, they were given to me. they were all survival based. They weren't necessarily positions that I'm thriving, this feeds me. All my positions were took from me. And I just I had to change that narrative. Like, no longer can I have that narrative. I have to care about how I feel. It was literally killing me and destroying me on the inside. I just couldn't take that pressure anymore.
Awesome. Awesome. So if you could just walk us through what did that transition look like? What was your healing journey, please?
Yeah. So I was thriving. I was absolutely thriving. So, as I said, all those things, and COVID started, was becoming a thing in early 2020, and I was like, you know what? I finally have the freedom to leave Chicago. I was born and raised in the city. It's treated me well. However, I wanted a new experience, and I felt that this was like the opportunity to do so. That COVID was the opportunity to do so, and I had finally quit my job. I had made a great financial investment in that condo because I purchased at a really low price. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to finally move to Florida because I want to be in the sun. I'm over the winter. I need sun rays, palm trees, and beaches and sand in between my toes. Like, this is what I need in my life. So I put my condo up for sale March 2020. 30 days later, I closed. And the funds I made from that was way more than my salary. So I gave myself a 1-year sabbatical. I'm like, I'm going to treat myself to 1 year off to frolic. And I still don't have it. This is the game plan, to go frolic in Florida. So that's what I did. I moved to Florida in 2020. I actually stayed there for 18 months. And that in itself was a very interesting experience because that was really where the healing journey began for me. Because of, COVID, we couldn't really go anywhere. So I picked up hobbies like learning the stock market. I picked up hobbies such as like learning about meditation, reading a lot more spiritual books, a lot of like law of attraction kind of books. And it was interesting because of the stock market, I started getting in my head about about being unemployed. Like, okay, you frolicked a little bit. What's the game plan? Well, COVID was never factored into the game plan. So it messed with a lot of my sabbatical plans. And that's really where like the healing journey began. So Florida, if you've ever been, I lived in Tampa for 18 months. If you've ever been, it's swampy. It's incredibly hot or hotter, which I never really took that into consideration because when I had considered Florida, I visited during the winter time and never really experienced the other 9 months there. I slowly started losing my hair because it was being fried in the sun. My hairline started receding. I started developing skin issues, even like a fungus on my back because of all the sweat. I couldn't wear cute clothes at all. I wore workout clothes everywhere. And I started getting a little bit of weight, and like slowly my confidence, I noticed my confidence and some of my femininity started to get hit. And on top of that, I was in my head about being unemployed, and I was making bad investments in the stock market and bad investments in like other business ventures. So my funds were drying up faster than I had expected, and the job market was ice cold, which I did not expect. So here I am in Tampa, looking crazy, unemployed, really in my head. I learned a lot about my self-talk through meditation, and how critical and how unkind I was. So I started working on changing that narrative. But when the 18 months was over, I'm like, you know what? I miss the seasons. This weather is like not working with me physically. I love Tampa, but the weather wasn't it. So I'm like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And it was very similar to that photo where I looked at myself in the mirror and I didn't recognize who I was in the mirror. Like, I just did not physically look or feel like my confident self anymore. I would do little things like maybe if I put on a pair of earrings, it'll boost my self-esteem, or I couldn't do anything with my hair at the time. Like there was no wig, no extension, no nothing I could put in my hair that would work. It was just not it. So fast forward, I moved to Colorado, and I would say Colorado is where I hit rock bottom. Rock bottom for me in Colorado, COVID was still present. The effects of COVID was still present. My only experience was in event planning, and I did not want to go back to events. However, I would apply to event planning jobs because that's what I knew. I would get interviews. I would even make the final rounds, but they would never move forward with me. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I truly in my heart did not want it to work out. But survival mode kicked in, right? Like, we didn't plan for this during the sabbatical.
And it's if the role isn't for you, if you're not excited about the role, and you know, I think at this point in your journey, your body, and you couldn't have a poker face anymore. And that probably was showing in the interviews.
Yeah, exactly. People could read energy. You could look how you look, but people read energy, you know, like all of us do. So
just imagine the conversations behind closed doors with the decision to hire is, you know, she sounds really great, but I just don't think she wants it. Which, as an equity consultant, I'm like, you know. But the reality is, like, you probably, because you were in survival mode, like they were sensing that energy, as you said.
Yeah, that desperate energy. That's what it was. It was desperate energy. Survival mode is desperate energy.
And that's part of the healing process, is sometimes we want to go back, and we because we're survival mode, you know, and yet not knowing that part of that journey is like, no, once you know, and once your body has picked up on it, many times it lives back. We're being forced forward regardless if we want to or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like we're not allowed to backpedal once you're in the healing journey, which is interesting and fascinating all at the same time.
Yeah, so I started learning more about like the law of attraction, maybe get all the spiritual stuff, all the affirmations, all the YouTube sound baths, yoga, you know, like all the things to like try to make me feel better. But it wasn't quite working because my finances were depleting quickly. I mean, I was at the point where I had like 2 months worth of living funds left. And I remember just beating myself up. Like, you left such a secure job. You made so much money off this house. Like, you worked for such a long time to build this for yourself. And it's literally all crumbling it all crumbled to the ground. You know, all the things that I attached my value to, right? I had no title, had no funds. I was still looking crazy. You know what I mean? Like, not my confident, you know, feminine self, if you will. And it was just rock bottom. And there was a point where I kind of sat there where I'm like, okay, I have 2 months worth of funds left. I guess I have to like myself. It was just this like aha moment, because I didn't like myself because I didn't have the things to like, right? These external factors weren't there. So it's like, I guess I have to like myself. So that's what I started doing. I was like, you know what? It's going to get figured out. I can't force it. It's going to get figured out. So let's start caring about how I feel. Kind of going back to that, caring about how I feel. So I started working out daily. I started getting dressed in the morning, putting on earrings and makeup and a cute little outfit. I had nowhere to go. But it made me feel a little bit better about myself, right? Put on a little bit of earrings, something. I would go on hikes. You know, I live in Colorado. It's gorgeous. I would go on hikes. I had a good friend who's a yoga teacher there, and like she and I would do some yoga together. And slowly but surely, I started like feeling a little bit better. Mind you, it's still looming. The fact that I have 2 months left is still looming. And then that's when I decided, you know what? I need to hire a coach. I need to hire someone that like can help me through this. And not just any coach. I said, I need to hire a spiritual coach, because I was definitely in a spiritual journey at that point. I was undoing a lot of narratives for myself, undoing a lot of beliefs. I was reprogramming old software, identifying and reprogramming. And as you know, there's like an integration period with that, where the old programming still wants to stay and like stay alive and stay in your body. And I'm fighting through it, but I'm like, I need a spiritual coach. So I went on Etsy. I'm like, they probably are on Etsy. So I just went on Etsy. There was one spiritual coach, and she was such a game changer. I would meet with her, I think every 2 or 3 weeks or so. And she actually taught me about having a prosperity mindset, because at the time I definitely had a shortage conscious mindset. I was very survival mode. I had shortage consciousness. There was never enough. Nothing was ever enough, right? Always grasping and not let releasing, right? Always holding on. So she helped me with prosperity mindset through some like prosperity games. One game that she gave it was great. It was like the $10 champagne dinner. And her whole thing was, you have $10, get dressed up, go to a cute rooftop bar, order yourself a $10 glass of champagne, and just sit and enjoy the view and enjoy yourself. Like, embody what it feels like to be in this setting. You know, you don't have to spend tons of money, but like start with where you're at. Very similarly to like just getting dressed up, right? Start with where you're at. You don't have to like find a stylist, you know what I mean? Like just start with what you have. And then she also taught me about the divine feminine principles. And for anyone who doesn't know what the divine feminine principles are, it's essentially increasing your capacity to receive with ease. It's about calling in your power, which means no longer relying on external validation. You validate yourself. It means not letting others be in control of your emotions. So it required a lot of emotional mastery for myself. Other principles include how to care about yourself, self-care, self-love, and like actionable ways to do those things and have that show up in your everyday life, so that you're embodying it and not doing this one-off thing on Sunday, you know, like a Sunday reset. Like this is an everyday thing. This is what I do. You know, pleasure, being mindful, being present, trusting, not rushing, not trying to control outcomes, not trying to control people. Right. So there was a lot of these lessons that I had learned. And one game I did start playing is, which actually helped me find my Salesforce job, is a game I play with the universe. Universe are always sending us signs. They're always sending us signs. You know, you're on the right path, or go left, go right. My game is, if I hear a word or a phrase twice within like a short time frame, usually within a week, it's a sign for me. It's a message for me. So I called a friend of mine up and said, hey, he's like a big time person that works at McDonald's headquarters. So I just called him and said, hey, like, any career advice? He's talking me through things, and he says, have you ever heard of Salesforce by any chance? I'm like, I don't know what that is. No. He's like, okay, whatever. So we move on. We're having a conversation. And then a couple of days later, I call another friend of mine up who's in tech, and he's talking to me, and he was like, have you heard of Salesforce? And I was like, okay, you're the second person to mention this word to me. I don't know what this word is, but I need to pay attention. So I said, tell me everything. He's like, yeah, well, I work at Salesforce. I'm a developer. Have you ever thought about being a Salesforce administrator? And he started talking to me about what it meant to be a Salesforce administrator. He's like, you can get certified and look for jobs. And his mom at the time owned a nonprofit that helped people become Salesforce certified, where they would train you, pay for your certification, and help you with job placements. And so he had a lot of resources for me. So I was like, yes, I'm interested. I'm doing this. So he created like the playlist for me to learn, the training guide to learn. In 2 weeks, I made that my full-time job. I studied for 8 weeks. I studied for 8 hours each day to pass this exam. After 2 weeks, I passed the exam. I got certified on my first try, and I started applying to jobs on LinkedIn. I optimized my LinkedIn profile, and it was a complete opposite of event planning, like applying for event planning positions. They were coming to me in droves. Like, it was such a different experience than what I previous experienced. So I eventually landed my first six-figure job within 6 weeks of being certified. So it took 2 months for me to go from like, having that moment of what am I doing with myself in my life to landing my first six-figure gig. And I just remember feeling so grateful and so relieved and so just in awe of how the universe works if you're paying attention and like do the work. And I've been in that role ever since. I absolutely love it.
That is awesome, Lula. Thank you so much to unpack. And you believe it, we are at time, but so much of your journey I relate to. I find inspiring, making the bold. Let's
very bold.
Especially coming, I don't even want to ask what your parents thought or if you even told your parents.
I mean, I eventually told them, but I was like, I just need silence for now and just do this. It was for me.
There was a delay. There has to be a delay. So want to note that. Because this is inspiring. So, but we have to give these little nuggets like this. Don't go out and there's strategy behind this, right?
There is. And the whole figuring it out from childhood, like
how that came back, but
it keeps showing up for me, and it still does to this day.
Yes,
I'll figure it out.
I want to highlight for you another full circle moment of you talked about the journey, the transition to Knox, and how the culture shock from that. Mm-hmm. But yet, look how many years later. When you put yourself on that paid sabbatical, you moved to the southeast, and then after you tried that out for a year and a half, you were like, you know what, this isn't it, and then uprooted yourself again to Colorado, where you admit, this is where it hit rock bottom. But in that rock bottom, in that 2-month period. It's interesting that you said you chose a coach, but then you went spiritual. I assumed, career coach. You went spiritual.
Spiritual coach, because it's all the inner, it's this. It's this. As a first generation immigrant, tell me what to do, I'll do it. I'll figure it out and I'll do it. But no one teaches us about emotional intelligence, about it's 80% mindset, 90% mindset, and energy, and like how you vibrate, what you believe, like your core beliefs is how we operate. But that was never taught to us, right? I kind of had to learn baptism. I was definitely a baptism by fire moment for me during those like 2.5-year period. But like, that's something I love to like share with people, like journey, like trusting, especially principles of the divine feminine. Like that is my passion. I live every day. I try to embody it daily, and how I show up in the world, how I trust. It's been the game changer for me.
Awesome. That's so great to hear. Lula, thank you so much for sharing your journey. If someone is interested into, as you know, the job market today, I would compare it back to 2008, 2010. It's a mess right now. Someone who is interested in getting into Salesforce administration, what would you recommend? What would be some steps you would recommend for them?
Yeah. I would recommend connecting with someone you know in your network. Honestly, you can even connect with me. I'm more than happy to give you my insights and my journey. But definitely connect with someone who's in the field just to kind of understand what it entails. Also, Salesforce utilizes a platform called Trailhead, where they have a playlist of all their different like learning modules. That's how you can start learning more about it. So that's definitely the two places that I would start. That's where I started, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Lula. All right. So I thank you all so much for joining us today. Lula, before I let you go, with all my guests, I have these lightning round questions.
Love it. Shoot.
Top of mind thinking. Don't think too hard. All right. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. First question. A morning ritual that you try not to break.
Cleaning for 20 minutes.
Okay.
I need a clear, clean space so my mind is right in the morning.
Yes. Love it. A book that has made a huge impact or that you keep coming back to.
Ask and It Is Given by Abraham Hicks.
Ask and It Is Given by Abraham Hicks. Okay.
Spiritual book.
Awesome. What song automatically shifts your mood?
Cocaine Model by Zhu.
Okay. I'm gonna look that one up.
It's a fun one.
Awesome. All right, my last one. Complete this sentence. Lately, I am learning to.
I am learning to be present.
Love it. Love it. Lula, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your journey, wonderful journey. I know it's going to be inspiring, especially to all the children of immigrants in finding your purpose.
We see you. You're not alone. You're not alone.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much once again for tuning in to Career Journeys with Coach Stella. Tune in for our next season as we continue to unpack careers and learn all the highs and also the lows and the lessons along the way. Take care. Oh, you can also, let me do my quick sign off. If you're interested in being a part of the platform, please feel free to reach out to me at coachstellaoc@gmail.com. You can also feel free to like and subscribe at Career Journeys with Coach Stella on YouTube and follow me on Instagram at Coach Stella OC. All right, everyone. See you next time. Thank you, Lula.
Of course.